Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're listening to the Raise Your Own Bar podcast. My name is Tammara Buckey, and I am the CEO and owner and founder of the company. And with me today is Ryan Jobs. Ryan is my sales guy. And how you doing, Ryan?
I am fantastic, spectacular. How are you?
I'm great. I'm very good. I'm glad to be here with you. So today we are going to do something a little bit different based on a listener who reached out and said, "I love what you're doing and I want to hear more about why you're doing it and kind of the history of Raise Your Own Bar and kind of what led you to this place." And so for that, I'm going to let Ryan interview me and he can ask the questions that listeners might be curious about. So take it away, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Tamara. And I will say that I am absolutely delighted to get this opportunity. But before we get started, there's a couple of housekeeping notes that we have to address. Okay. This is a highly coveted, sought after interview. You're a very busy individual, so we're delighted to finally get your time on camera. But we need to make it clear to your audience and your viewers that we want you to look into the camera and let everyone know that we did not pay for this interview, and let everyone know that no questions are off the table. We have not given you questions in advance, and we did not pay you for this interview. We want to be honest with your audience, so let them know that first, okay?
Okay, well, I pay myself out of the business, so that's not really true per se.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Another thing is all we got a lot of questions. We're polling people, and the curiosity that they want to know about you. We don't want to get into anyone's specific political background or anything like that. We don't want to be divisive. But if you had three options, we want to know what you're more likely to believe in: Santa Claus, Jesus Christ, or Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Okay, perfect. Now we can get started. This is great. This is great.
Great
Okay,
question.
fantastic. Now we know a little bit about each other, so we're good to go. So before we get started, we want to know a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? We want to understand how it came to the point where you decided to come up with this awesome opportunity to. The best way I can say this is a lot of people say, I want to become a better version of myself. So like the going phrase these days. And so Raise Your Own Bar, we believe, with your mission statement. Your mission statement is your mission is to spark positive change in individuals, teams, organizations. You accomplish that your mission by creating entertaining, educational content that empowers your workforce. So you coming up with that, tell us a little bit about your background and how it come to the point where you decided to come up with this.
Yeah, so I have always been one to raise my own bar, and I did that through education, through reading, through asking questions, and just leading with curiosity throughout my entire life. And I was one of those kids that really took to heart reading Rainbow. Knowledge is power. You can do anything you set your mind to, right? So that's kind of how I've always been driven. And I recognize as I was growing up, not everybody had that philosophy. Not everybody recognized that they could become anything they wanted to. And so I've always tried to encourage others and spark positive change by one, demonstrating what you could do and how you could possibly grow as an individual, but then also just giving encouragement and showing resources and opportunities to other people. And so I've kind of done it throughout my entire life for myself and a little bit here and there with other people. And I started kind of helping as a side business back, gosh, probably a decade ago now, really. And I would just help people get started. Like if they wanted to open their own business, I would help them figure out how to do that. If somebody wanted to get a better career, I would help them figure out how to do that. And in my actual career, I did various things. Um, when I was younger, before I got my education, I worked in food service, I worked in retail. I did some of the worst jobs ever when it comes to like customer service jobs, dealing with, I worked in a call center, um, the trifecta, grocery store, restaurant. The only thing I haven't done is fast food. And what I realize is that people don't know what they don't know. And so they settle for what they have. And so I'm always interested in trying to show people they have an option. They have something different that they can achieve. And so, long story short, throughout my entire career, which I specialized in finance and accounting, and that kind of evolved into eventually government contracting and process improvement and change management. And really, it's because I'm driven by this ultimate question: how do you get people to change? And I realize now, after a lifetime of research and experience, that it depends on the individual. Everybody is motivated by something different. And so my company is helping spark that change and motivate those individuals and meeting them where they are. And so I go to people through conferences, through conversations, through social media, and I connect with them and I figure out what makes them motivated. What do they actually need to work on? And then I help them put a plan together.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. And if we could make sure that we don't filibuster on these questions, because we've got a lot of questions that we want to get to. We got a live audience, and one audience member that chimed in had a question and wanted to understand where if you look at Raise Your Own Bar mantra and your website and your branding, there's heavy orange involved in that. And they wanted to know if that was associated with the Trump campaign or if there's another reason why you came up with that color orange. Because a lot of times colors have some sort of significance to them.
No, because my company existed, I believe, before. No, that's not true. My company existed since 2014. So before Trump
Perfect.
got into
That
office.
was another question. So we like
So
that.
no
2014.
impact.
Okay,
No
gotcha.
impact. No, it's a nod to, I love the color. To me, it represents vibrancy and it represents change. It represents ideas. It represents, like fire, which is destruction, but also, it's beautiful. And so I don't know, energy. And also, I'm a redhead, so I'm fiery myself. I align with the color scheme because I find myself to be fiery and feisty and, a catalyst for change. So it's kind of symbolic to how I feel.
Gotcha. That is fantastic. Um, you had mentioned that one job that you hadn't worked was fast food, which is interesting. I've always thought that everyone should work retail, everyone should work in a restaurant. It builds some little of a character and appreciation for it. So hopefully one of these days we can see you volunteering at a fast food restaurant. So you addressed another question. 2014, you've been in the business. You had the business for that long. In addition to what you've already said, um, and maybe you might reiterate what you've already said, what makes you think you're qualified to help another individual from any background make a better version of themselves and raise their own bar? What puts you in that position?
Well, for one, I've done it myself. And while I've only worked in a couple of industries, um, I have helped and worked with people from all over. And when it comes to change management, when it comes to motivating individuals, there are practices and processes that work no matter the industry, no matter the person. There are techniques and approaches that can pretty much be applied across the board. And then you tailor them down based on the individual motivating factors. So my experience has a certain flavor because I worked for government, I worked in finance and accounting, I've worked in business as a consultant. So there's a certain flavor there, but I've gotten to touch on other industries, and even still, when a process works, you can apply it in various formats. And what I'm talking about for me that I lean heavily on are my education and my certifications, which includes I have two master's degrees, one in business and one in public administration, which is basically like government. And then I've got a bunch of certifications from Lean Six Sigma, Black Belt, which is all about process improvement, to project management, a certified fraud examiner. I'm always going to look at things from the angle of money. And I think that anything can really be quantified because time is money, right? Energy is money. Thoughts are money. Ideas are money. And then, I've got other things. Like I'm working now on a coaching certification. I just became a neuro linguistic programming practitioner. And so everything that I'm doing and learning is so that I can help other people and so that I can meet them where they are. So, wide variety of experience and education that I'm kind of pulling together and using them as best practices to then be able to share with other people.
Fantastic. We love that. Good stuff. Going back to your mission statement, it's something that I find fascinating and I find interesting, and I think that can possibly differentiate Raise Your Own Bar from other entities. It states creating entertaining and educational content. Can you be more specific in regard to the entertainment aspect of your approach to help people?
Yeah, well, as you know, I do stand-up comedy for fun. I do improv as well sometimes. I do acting. I do music. Like, really, it's just a matter of embracing the arts. And if you can spend anytime integrating those entertaining aspects of the arts into your presentations, into your workshops, then it's going to be more educational because people are going to remember it. When people are entertained, they can just sit back and absorb the content and do the learning without the pressure of, oh my gosh, I have to learn this. So I always bring humor into it. I do my best to make it interactive and fun. And when there's time, depending on what we're doing, doing some actual improvisation can really get the creative juices flowing. It teaches people how to relax and play and be silly because sometimes when you're relaxed and at play, the best ideas come forward.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, do you have an example? Like, so for me, it's like if you say entertaining and you incorporate humor, are you coming in there doing an opening 5 minutes of stand up, or are you like more specifically? What if you can give an example to how you incorporate that entertainment part of it?
Yeah.
Because
So,
it's very interesting to me.
so I normally sprinkle jokes throughout. Like if I'm giving a speech, for example, I will start with some humor included, and then I will sprinkle jokes throughout the presentation. I do the same thing with training. If I'm facilitating or providing MC work, I typically build in some jokes here and there, just to kind of get things moving and keep things entertaining. And it also just helps people to maintain attention. If they are like, oh, once in a while there's a joke that comes out, they kind of look for it, if that makes sense. So while I'm not doing stand up the entire time, there is a balance because you are there usually to educate. And then another example, not stand up related, but I've done some interactive workshops where we do some improvisation. And so I will have exercises where we'll do some role playing. Maybe we'll do some conflict resolution role playing, for example, and we'll do it in a way that gets them uncomfortable. And we might use props and we might make up a silly story to go along with it so that there is improv. And so it's kind of a blending of role playing and, actual improv.
Well, that's interesting, and I know I do say that quite a bit, but this is a very interesting, fascinating interview. What kind of services, so that we're not missing out on anything, does Raise Your Own Bar offer?
So we offer training, coaching, and consulting. And that sounds very vague, I know, but it's tailored. That's why it sounds vague. So when it comes to training, we offer anywhere from 30-minute training sessions all the way to 3-week immersive courses. It just depends on the topic and the audience and how much time is allowed. I can speak for 30 minutes about finance. I can also speak for 3 weeks about finance. So it really just depends on how much time the business or organization has available. Now, on the individual side, coaching is where I will speak with people one on one to help figure out what they want to do with their life or what area they want to improve with their life. And then we will work towards that. And I will use the International Coaching Federation guidelines as well as my neurolinguistic programming practitioner training to tease out the core issues and then help the individual come up with the best plan that is executable, that is realistic, and that they can actually start moving on right away. And then when we talk about consulting, the consulting piece, I can come into an organization and I can help you solve a problem, or I can help you put together some things. So some of the projects I've done in the past include helping small businesses stand up things like their accounting processes and internal policies. I have a client where I work on a regular basis where I get to facilitate in a creative space with other people that do writing, and where we creatively workshop each other's material and help others, produce whatever it is they're working on. We're talking scripts, sketches, stand-up comedy, books, you name it. And so I also do some business process improvement where I'll go into an organization and let's say they have a problem with quality or they have a problem with customer satisfaction. And so I'll go in, I'll look at it, and I'll use my Lean Six Sigma tools to figure out where is the core of the problem and how can we resolve it, and then we'll implement some changes, and normally we'll do it in like um, an iterative format where you would have like a pilot improvement, and then you would measure it to see that you've truly been able to make change in the way that you need to, and then put some policies and some internal controls into place so that the process stays, in alignment the way it needs to, for like things like maximizing your productivity, maximizing your profit, getting rid of errors or rework, and then of course always increasing customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction.
Great. I think there is a challenge at times when someone who has a background like yourself in comedy, sometimes I feel like you want to divorce your humor from something that is so serious as to help someone make a better version of themselves. But at the same token, there is synergy between the ability to make people laugh and building relationships and getting people to get uncomfortable and do things that they may not be typical that they would want to do. Talking more about the comedy side of you, which I think is fascinating in and of itself, what are some successes that you've had in the comedy space? What is there something that you're working on in the comedy space? Because when I see you, when I talk to you so much, you are so focused and you're so serious, so driven as a business individual that sometimes you don't realize that this person is a stand-up comedian. This person works on this craft doing this, and we want to know some of the things that you've accomplished, you've done in that space, and something that you're working on, and how that's helping you elevate your own, raise your own bar, and help your business.
Yeah. So, first of all, humor has always been a coping mechanism for me. I grew up in a pretty tumultuous environment. There was just a lot of moving around. My mom was a teenager. She was 15 and she dropped out of the eighth grade when she was pregnant with me. So she was on welfare and we didn't have a lot, and there was just a lot going on. And so humor for me was a way to cope with life. And I would always look for the humor in situations, and I would always work to make other people laugh because I found that it kind of relieved tension. It kind of caused a little bit of a de-stressor for other people. And so I was always fascinated with making people laugh. And maybe that's like the people pleaser in me because I want other people to be happy. So it's a way for me to provide happiness. But when it comes to doing stand-up comedy, I'm working on I've been doing comedy for almost 12 years. November will be 12 years. And it's something that I've always been interested in. I started watching stand-up comedy when I was a child. I had no business watching, but I would watch like Sam Kinison and oh gosh, can't think of this guy's name off the top of my head, but stuff that's R-rated, stuff that was like Richard Pryor, and it was not meant for kids, but I would watch it and I fell in love with the craft. And I always envisioned myself doing stand-up comedy, but it wasn't until a friend of mine started dating a comic that she introduced me to, and he kind of convinced me to give it a try, that I finally, stepped into it. Now, as a comic, I did win the funniest accountant in the South competition, which is like the nerdiest mashup that could exist for somebody like me who worked in finance and accounting for her career and then also does stand up. So it was an awesome event where basically they had tryouts, and this took place in Atlanta. And they did this every year for 20 years, although I don't know that they're going to do it anymore. I think they kind of got sidelined with COVID and some other things, but they had
I'm getting
tryouts.
I'm getting something in my ear from my producer saying they saved the best for last. So when you won, apparently they just decided that was it. They were leaving on a high note. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what it was. That was awesome. Yeah, so we did tryouts. I think there was over 100 people that tried out. They whittled it down to like 5 people, and then one person dropped out early, and then it was down to four. And then from there, we all performed in front of a live audience at the Roxy in Atlanta. And then they voted based on applause and reaction. And then there was also like a panel of judges that also somehow weighed in. But it was really great. I got to win. I won a trip to Vegas, expenses paid. Um, the people were great. We raised a bunch of money for Junior Achievement of Georgia, which is an organization that helps kids get educated. They cover tuition for things like trade schools and uh, certification programs and even college. And it specifically helps people in get into like business and finance. So we raised, I think, about $100,000 with that event for Junior Achievement of Georgia. And then I got to wear the crown with the expectation that there was going to be another follow on the following year. This was in 2022, but there hasn't been. So I'm the reigning champion, apparently. And as far as what I'm working on now, so there comes a point in a comedian's life where they want to put out an album and record a special so that they can do that. So I'm working towards that. I'm working on my comedy special that will be recorded live in Ohio. I'm taking it back to this small little town where my mom lives, where I graduated from high school, Cambridge, Ohio area. And I'm going to be recording it in front of people, including my mom and my aunt that will be there, and it's going to be a blast. And then I'm going to put it out myself. So self-producing. I'm bringing my own sound guy. I'm bringing my own video guy. I'm bringing my own host. Of course, you're going to be my host of that lovely
Oh,
event, and it's
wow.
going to be fantastic. And then we're just going to put it out for free on YouTube so people can enjoy it.
We definitely look forward to that. Is there a working title in progress, or is that something that we will find out at a later date?
I have a couple of working titles, so I don't want to leak anything because I don't
Sure,
know which one I'm going to go with. I'm kind of stuck between a few, but you and I should talk about that offline because I would love to hear your thoughts.
I'm here for it. If I tell you a phrase, progress versus perfection, how do you feel about that? And I don't want to say it's like a loaded question, but I feel as if knowing you more than most people that are watching this, I feel as if you aim for perfection, and this goes back to raising one's bar. And if I look at some people who aim for perfection, they're hesitant in regard to taking on a project, taking on a task, if it can't be executed to perfection. And there are other schools of thoughts where it's like, if we're working on something, as long as we're getting better than we were before, we're making progress. We're not going to put out something that's perfect, but we're going in the right direction. If I present that to you, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you look at statistics and you look at how experiments are performed, you come up with a range of like a threshold that you will accept. And so it might be something like 95%, it might be something like 99%, and maybe in some circumstances it's 80%. So you have to decide your tolerance for wiggle room, for error, if you will. So depending on what it is, you have to decide what you need. Is it 99% perfect or is it 85% perfect? And then just work accordingly. Now, when it comes to perfect, perfect doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. It's a nice idea to work towards. Yes, you want to strive for perfection, but you want to be a realist and know that it truly cannot be achieved. However, you can be incrementally better every single day, every iteration of a process. You can do it better than you did before. And the way that you do that is by reflecting and realizing where you made your mistakes and what you could have done differently, and then make those changes. You know, we spend all this time analyzing information and taking in information, but without actually applying it, it doesn't do anybody any good. And so My goal is to be better than I was yesterday or last week or last year. And if I look back, I am. And if I compare myself to other people, I might feel like I'm never going to be successful or I'm never going to reach the goals that I have. And that's actually doing myself a disservice. Now, I will take inspiration from other people. I will look at people and say, I want to be like them. I like what they're doing and I want to do something similar. But I don't fall into the trap of comparing myself to others. And there is a cutoff point. So when it comes to what are you willing to accept, there's a point where you have to cut it off, and it largely depends on how much time you have to spend on something and how important that thing is. But it should be proportionate to your audience. So like if I'm doing a gig where I'm going to be speaking for an hour in front of 50 people, I'm going to spend maybe 4 hours on preparing for that thing. If I'm going to be speaking for 2 hours, that's going to go up. I'm going to need more time to prepare. If I'm going to be speaking to a crowd of 5,000, I'm going to probably prepare a little bit differently. So hopefully that helps.
It does. And you touched on something that you and I have had conversations about this in the past. And I want to get your views on. It's like in the game of golf, you're playing against yourself, right? You're trying to get par and you're trying to beat the score that you did the previous round that you played. I am an athlete. I've come up with a school of athletes where there's always competitive, there's statistics, there's records that they have, and you're trying to chase someone else's stats, someone else's record. And I guess I want you to address goal setting, chase beating or being a better version of yourself versus, hey, Michael Jordan shot 10 threes in 1993 in Madison Square Garden, and I want to shoot 12 threes because I want to beat Michael Jordan's record, which it's a good idea to try to aim towards something. But what you said is important. What we need to focus in on is Michael Jordan maybe have a different talent, maybe have different resources, maybe have a different backstory than you do. So let's focus on you and you being better than you were yesterday. If you can touch on that, if you haven't done so already.
Well, it kind of comes down to what are your goals? And, if your goal is to be a basketball player, then yeah, you would look to somebody like Michael Jordan and you would base your goals after some of the records he's broken and some of the things that he's done. But for me, I have goals that align with certain things in my life. And so it really ultimately starts with what do you want? What do you want in life? Now, once you figure out what you want, and you really need to be willing to dig and be open and do a lot of reflecting to figure out what you want. But for me, it looks like this. I want to get paid to speak. I want to share my knowledge and experience with the world so that they can be happier and healthier and have better outcomes. And I'm willing to share that in the manner, whatever fits best, whether it be through writing, through coaching, through training, through speeches. Again, I try to meet people where they are. So I share stuff on social media. I share stuff on YouTube. I'm doing this podcast because you got to meet people where they are, and people are everywhere, right? And so my goals are in alignment professionally with that. I want to get paid to speak. So I have my business. I'm working towards growing it and attaining new customers and expanding our experience as a company. And that's one area. But then I want to be personally healthy. I want to have good relationships. I want to be financially secure and free. I want to have freedom of movement as well. I love to travel. And so all the things that I do with my business and the gigs that I go after and the gigs that I accept are in alignment with those things. Does it allow me to travel? Can I do them from other places? Is it doing some of the things that I love to do, which is talking to others and sharing experiences and teaching them? And then building relationships. I get the opportunity to travel to go visit friends and family. And a lot of times, if there's somewhere that I want to go, I will try to find a gig there so that I can do a double whammy, right? And I'm working on my fitness, I'm working on my health, I'm working on eating better and things like that because I want to be healthy and I want to be here longer so that I can continue to do these things.
That's great. I think that's a really, really good approach. In your business, and obviously, I'm your sales guy, so I know a little bit more than most people that are tuning in right now. In different categories, different areas that you address, what are some of your biggest success stories? Like I know, for example, sometimes some of the services that you offer, motivational speaking, you'll go to middle schools, you'll go to schools, you'll go to colleges, universities, and you'll give talks there. I know that there are companies that can reach out to you and you can build team building exercises and conflict resolution. So tell me some of like, a few of your top success stories that you've had from the business since its inception.
Yeah. So, speaking engagements are a huge success. Being able to talk to people in a one to many manner, whether it be virtual or live, has been a consistent success for the company. Specific topics hit very, very well. And a couple of those I'll give you. Conflict resolution is one. And then imposter syndrome. How to cope with imposter syndrome is another one that's really big. And then for middle schools and kind of like the younger audience, anti-bullying. Anti-bullying is huge. And anti-bullying and conflict resolution are kind of one and the same in a way when you think about it, right? And so I'm always incorporating kind of the soft skills that I think are crucial to getting along with people, to figuring out how to lead other people and grow in your career and be a good team member and really make changes in the world. It comes down to conflict resolution. And so that's something that I consistently touch upon. And I've got some training specifically targeted towards that. I'm also a facilitator for core strengths, SDI, strengths deployment inventory, which was recently bought out by another company. I believe it's called Crucial Conversations, which is all about how to resolve conflict by knowing your people and knowing what their strengths and their weaknesses are and their values. And that's really what everybody needs to do. So some of the things I've been really successful at on the speaking side, on the training side, are related to those topics. And then on the coaching side, just one-on-one events, one-on-one, I'm sorry, not events, but one-on-one coaching sessions have been really good. I have a program where people can get in and meet with me either once a week or once a month or once a quarter, whatever their cadence is. And I've got some proven tools that I use that can help people get on track and stay on track with meeting their own goals. And then on the consulting side, um, coming into an organization and evaluating your processes and determining where the fat can be trimmed, specifically when it comes to saving money. Since I always take it back to money as a uh, financial person, I can look at an organization and see where are ways that they are wasting money, where is money being left on the table, and what they can do to save money, increase their revenues, save time so that their people can be freed up to do other things that might be more profitable. And then overall, just kind of boost profitability for the company.
When you're on an interview, and sometimes people want to over exaggerate, and maybe that's not the right word, about themselves on the resume in the interview. But then that idea of imposter syndrome, am I supposed to be here, is something that's new to me. I want you to talk about it, talk about how they struggle with it, how they can overcome it, and how to incorporate that in your day-to-day lifestyle if you're in a position that you think you've worked hard to get there, to be confident in that position. And your thoughts on that.
So first of all, I don't think anybody should over exaggerate on the resume. I think that's a bad practice because you're setting yourself up for failure because a lot of times the resume is used to set expectations for the employee. So if you make yourself sound more involved in something than what you truly were, then that is going to show with the experience once you start getting into the thing. So, highly discourage exaggerating on your resume. There is a difference, though. You do want to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best light. And that's where I could help people with. I specifically do career coaching to help individuals take their resume, and I have a conversation with them to truly understand what they did and what the impact was, because a lot of times we'll dismiss things as not important or not value added when it really was. And it's just because that individual doesn't necessarily see how what they were doing fits in with the big picture of the organization. So I do have a good knack with taking information and being able to put it in the best light possible for the individual. Now, imposter syndrome is this notion of not really being good enough or deserving of something, and it could be a position. And I have felt that many times in my life. And it really is, ultimately, it's a lack of confidence in a thing. And the only way that you can really get through that is to become more confident. And how do you do that? Well, you work hard, you learn more, you get more experience, you do things over and over again until it becomes second nature to you. And imposter syndrome comes up a lot of times for me when I'm trying something new. And that is something that I battle because, of course, I'm not going to be great at something the first time I try it. Who is? Right. But I've convinced myself sometimes that I should be good at something, or I should be more knowledgeable about something. And, you know, there's a point where I worked in project management and I would get tasked with things that were brand new. Nobody's ever done these things before. So there's no expert. I'm the expert now because I'm starting to dig into it. And imposter syndrome would come up and it would make me feel like, oh, I'm never going to figure this out, or I don't deserve to be doing this thing. But ultimately, I was the best person for the job. And it's because of the skill set that I do have, which is curiosity, research, problem solving, process improvement, that kind of thing. So overall, when it comes to imposter syndrome, you just have to get more confident about things. And I am writing a book about that. It's called Imposter Syndrome Survival Guide. It is something that I have been writing for almost 2 years now, and it's taking its sweet time. And part of that is because of me and my imposter syndrome and not wanting to finish it. But I will definitely share more about that when I get closer to reaching that goal. And on that note, Ryan, we do need to wrap up because I have somebody that just showed up at my house. So, um, thank you so much for taking the time to interview me. And thank you everyone for listening. Ryan, is there anything you want to plug for yourself before we go?
Nothing. I'm just delighted to be on the team. Thank you for the opportunity for me to get to know a little bit more about you and your business, and look forward to being there for you when you completely knock out your comedy special later in this year. So thank you.
Wow. Yes, I can't wait. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you everybody for listening to Raise Your Own Bar. Until next time. Bye.